Hello, everyone, and welcome to our review of our homeschool directive resources. Today, I am bringing you Kareem from Spanish Educational Solutions. She is here to help us with one of our high school graduation requirements, which is world languages, if you're going to choose to do that. And what better language to learn than Spanish? So, Kareem, hello and welcome.
Hola, gracias. How are you, Michelle? So nice talking to you.
It's so nice to talk to you. I'm so excited to have you talk to my community about your resource because for me, being a homeschool parent, Spanish was the first world language that we introduced to our home. And I speak no Spanish at all. And even though half of my children speak Spanish, I still don't because it just doesn't come natural for me. World languages, I just haven't been able to do for myself, but
Yes.
I've been lucky to be able to find other people who love the language and love helping my teens learn how to
That's
speak
great, Michelle.
Spanish.
And I want to point out to say this because that's one of the greatest challenges when it comes to foreign language. And I'm so glad that you homeschool and you realize it's not my limitation, it's about my kids' potential. So congratulations to you.
Thank you. And we need to outsource sometimes as homeschool parents, and we need to find organizations that work really well with homeschoolers. Like there's tons of Spanish programs out there. But the reason why I'm interviewing you is because you were a homeschool parent or still are a homeschool parent at the time of this recording. You
One to
are
go.
one to go, a homeschool parent. So I think when you have a business owner that's providing a resource to the homeschooling community, there's just this elevated edge that a homeschool parent brings to their business other than just like a traditional Spanish program that doesn't really understand the nuances of the dynamics of the homeschooling community. So can you share with us a little bit about yourself and about how you even began to homeschool and why that's important for us to know as a community about your values of the program?
This is so interesting because I was first a learner. English is my second language. So when I arrived to this country in 1991, I had to figure out how I'm going to learn English. So I understand the struggles that are for parents and for even for teams, for you to tell your team, now you're going to be learning Spanish, a new language. Your team is like, what? This is too hard, right? But, I understand that because I had to learn English myself. And then my husband, when I got married with my husband, we are a multicultural family. I'm from Guatemala. My husband is from Bolivia. He said to me, we should homeschool. I had no idea what he was saying. I was like, homeschool, what is that? So we went through our own journey discovering homeschooling for our kids before even we have them. And then we had the kids and we decided, well, we want to make sure they're bilingual. They need to embrace English, but also they need to embrace Spanish. So that was my journey. But when I came to the United States, I was thinking, how am I going to make a living? Like, what am I going to do? And I was like, let's start with the easiest part. I know how to teach Spanish. I started my journey of becoming a teacher in Guatemala. So I decided to become a Spanish teacher. And I was in the United States teaching in the public school for 16 years. I taught IB Spanish, which is IB is an international program. And I also taught immersion. And then in 2014, I decided to transition. I went back to school, got my master's degree in online learning and curriculum. And then I was like, I can help homeschoolers, because I knew I was a homeschool by myself and I knew many parents were in the dark. How do you navigate foreign language when you are not in a school where the school tells you what to do and you have the teachers, but then you're at home trying to figure out, okay, what did I do? And that's how I transitioned from public school teacher to start creating my own program. And in that process, as a homeschool mom, it's like, I told my kids, you're going to be my students and you have to take my program. my own kids had been part of the program, and that's how I started developing an elementary program, because I do believe if you start earlier, it's going to be better. But also I started developing the Spanish 1 and 2, and now I'm developing the 3.
So your kids were your guinea pigs.
They were, for the elementary program, my daughter is there in almost every video. And because my youngest one refused to speak Spanish. My other two were like,
Oh,
okay, but my youngest one is like, my brother, my sister speak English. I don't want to do that. And so I was thinking, how do I make this fun for her? And I said, hey, let's create a program together. So my program became a really personal program for me.
yeah. And I think that's important, right? Because what happens if we have a reluctant learner? But we
Exactly.
still, at this high school level, we want to have world language in our children's transcripts. It's really nice.
That's very important for colleges. If you are thinking university colleges, they want to see that you took a foreign language and that you just not did one level or two, but it looks really good in the transcript when you can show that you have several years foreign language.
Yes. Most universities want to see like a minimum of 2 years of
Yes.
proficiency. And so I think that's what I like about your program is that you can start off at a younger level. But I know you and I have talked about what happens if somebody comes in already taking some Spanish classes, maybe using Duolingo, or maybe took a class at a co-op or an online,
Well,
an online school, and they're coming to you. Like,
mhm.
what does that process look like for those students?
So the way I see it is I see it as a positive, not negative. I tell parents, the moment technology came into our worlds, the idea that you can only learn from one resource, it's over. I think that technology gave students the ability to say, if I want to become bilingual, there is nothing stopping me, right? But what I tell parents is that the reason why sometimes students do not become proficient in a language is because they did not have a methodology, and we need a methodology. We need somebody to help us put the puzzle together. Language is like a puzzle, right? You have grammar, you have vocabulary, but then how can you put it together so you can produce language, right? And because at the end of the day, you want your student to speak, right? Even if it's a beginner level, you want something.
Mhm.
So I found that all of these resources that you are using, they are great to enrich the system that you have to learn every day. Because this is the thing, you're going to have your teen, your child is going to be like, what did I do today? and I think you and I have a passion about teachers, right? There is something about teachers that we experience because teachers know where students get stuck. Teachers understand what is hard for a student. So I think that when you have a methodology where students are being given the foundation and then start building from there. Remember, a foreign language is a building skill. You can't just put things together and hopefully you're going to have, hopefully you're going to have a cake. No, there has to be steps and process in place. And that's where I found that if you already have done it, I say, some parents tell me, well, I think we did something about Spanish one and we did, and I say, did you learn these basics? Do your students know how to use stem changing verbs? And if the students looks at me like, what is that? I was like, okay, if it's a teen, I remember, I think that we have to clarify. Earlier, a young student learns very different than a teen. So when you are thinking about curriculum, when you're thinking about how we're going to learn, you need to keep in mind the learning needs of your child and also the goals. So there is a difference between a goal between an early year student, which is they are learning for fun. They have years to gain proficiency. But a high school student or a middle school student, they want that course in their transcript. So we want to make sure that whatever our teen is doing has a beginning and has an end so we can put a grade. And sometimes with an app, it's kind of hard. Like you don't really know what you're learning. There is no
Yes.
sequence. You can't show your work. So I just think that parents need to think, what is the goal here? And based on that in mind, start choosing curriculum that is going to help your teen get there. I want to share a quick story. Like for us, when I was trying to teach math to my daughter, and now she's my engineer, right? My daughter quickly realized My mom has no idea what she's doing about math because I was trying to pull all of these different resources and she needed sequence. She needed methodology. She needed guidance. And I was not providing for that. And she was getting very frustrated. She was getting really mad because every time she had a question, I didn't know how to help her. So I do think that as parents, as we are looking for what is the best resource, we need to take in consideration what is the goal, look at the learning needs of our child. If it's an early year, young student, or it is a teenager, this the goal, what is, and then it's like, what are my limitations? Like if you can't teach that, then, I am so glad programs like you exist because the parents can tap into you and say, please help me. How did I find a resource to get this journey done and my student can finish high school years with a strong transcript and with a strong learning experience?
Right. And your program works really well because it's online. And I think another thing that I like about your program is that it can have some live components to it if you choose to do that. I think what I like about your program is that it has the structure that it needs. It's online, so all people from Dubai to Canada to UK can take your classes, and it has this feedback component to it. And I think that's what I found most helpful in my homeschooling journey when it came to world languages. It's a language. It has to be spoken, and it has to be spoken with somebody that knows more than I do in this case, so they could kind of tweak those little things about not being a speaker of the language myself that was really beneficial. I think it's really important of what you were talking about when people come to you that have piecemealed together using Duolingo or using these other elements of trying to figure out the Spanish language. It's really beneficial to have somebody come alongside your student and say, okay, here's where you are. I can help fit you into the program and move you into where you need to be as a student. So once you figured that out for our students, then what happens? You have these online classes, but what does that look like for me, the parent, to help navigate the responsibility of homework load and being available? So talk to me a little bit about that.
And I think that, as a teacher and as a homeschool mom, I created a solution that has a solution for the students that can do live component, where you have the course with the live component, the speaking classes. But there are many students. One of my most famous courses are the independent ones because so many students, they need the flexibility. They need support, but they need flexibility. So I think, and you and I know that when we have multiple students, we have a budget. So there are so many components that sometimes are going to be part of our decision making. But one of the things I offer in my program that even if you are independent student, you have support. And I think that that's important. And when I was creating my online courses, because remember, I was a traditional teacher. For me, if you were to tell me that I was going to be creating an online program, my husband suggested to me when I remember the online thing was coming, and he's like, you should become an online teacher. She's like, never. I want to touch those students, see them and be there and see their faces. And he just let it go. But then he left when in 2014 I went back to get my master's online because I wanted to know how to do it. You have this unique situation where you had a teacher that was in the classroom, then was a homeschool mom raising 3 kids that were completely different, and all of my kids need different programs. I have never used the same curriculum, except my kids Spanish. They have no choice, that they are stuck with me. But you have to really try different. And for me, I had this in mind when I was creating the courses. I say, I want to do an independent with teacher support, and I want to do the course with the speaking classes. So even my speaking classes, the students already have the content there. They already have the lessons. They already have what they know what to do every day. But when they join the live classes, it's to speak and to make sure that they are producing the language. So it's a blended approach. So students never come to me to learn the content. The content is already there. And that's something that is a huge benefit. But I'm going to tell you something, Michelle. Parents, we need to be we need to be aware that that could be also a huge challenge because the content is there 24/7. So guess what? When you're taking a vacation, when things are hard, the first thing that is put on hold is the online class because you're gonna I'm gonna do it later, but later never happens. So this is why, it's important to have that structure and what it looks like. When students go inside the course, they know what to do every week. They know what to do every day. Parents, if you're taking the independent course, they are able to come and complete, like a record with grades, and the student is earning the grade. Now, for the young ages, I have a structure too. I have a structure where you are learning every week. You are learning how to speak complete sentence about certain topics, because I take an immersion approach. But it's very different, my elementary teaching style, than my middle school and high school program. Because imagine me going to a teenager and say, now let's learn about the farm. They're going to look at me like, I want to learn about the farm. But guess what? When I tell my teenagers, you're learning about how a restaurant experience, the eyes go up because teenagers love to eat. So for me, every program that I have, it answers to the emotional needs of the student too. Because, students will not remember what was present tense, past tense. Students will remember how the language makes them feel. When they were learning, how were they feeling about the language? So when I put lessons together, I'm always thinking, is this fun? Would a teenager be excited about this? Will the teenager find this relevant? Past tense is difficult. You have to learn two different types of past tense. But, they learn about past tense like taking a trip. They talk about taking a trip in the past tense. That's fun. So they learn about perfect tense when they're talking about their childhood. Who does not like to talk about themselves? Right? Right. So I do think that, like going back to your question, what is the experience like for parents that choose my program? I am hoping at the end of the day, if it's for a teenager, I want the teenager to own their education and drive the car. And for the parent to be the facilitator and understand what's going on, but be a support for the parent and be a teacher for the student.
That's a wonderful, wonderful mission right there. Is because we're supposed to be taking these teens and launching them into adulthood. And they should have a little bit more responsibilities and at this level. So I do have a question in regards to some of our community where English, it's being taught in English, or is it totally immersion? Because what some of our students aren't, their first language is not English, like it wasn't yours. But yes. So how do we navigate when we're an international community here? How do we navigate the class structure? Will it work for somebody that's English is their first language?
I do think that if English is not your first language, let's talk about United States. When you are here in United States and your teen is starting a class, I quickly realized it can be an immersion because the kids will be like, I don't understand what the teacher is saying. So a lot of the teaching, I go back and forward between this is how you learn in English and this is in Spanish. So I find that a lot of international students will benefit from understanding, that's how it works in English. Because I'm going to tell you something. A lot of my students, when I ask them questions, the live classes, and I ask them a question that is related to English grammar, they're like, don't know.
Even if they were born in the United States, yes, the grammar seems to escape their mind all of a sudden.
Yes, so they are reviewing their own grammar in English and they are connecting the grammar to the new rule in Spanish. So I wish if you live in China, I will be able to teach you in Chinese the rule, but I will promise that.
No, but it's really important. So you're almost, if English is not your first language, and we're talking about high school transcripts, we're talking about a program that supports two languages. And in this case, it would support their English learning, and it would support this maybe a new language to add to their portfolio of world languages that they're wanting to learn. I mean,
yes, it will review.
worldwide, English is spoken by a lot of different countries and it's required. So that's a good point
That's a good
to
point. And, I do remember this person was trying to take an SAT, which is an admission test to a university
Mhm.
from the United States. And she told me that her score improved. And she believes it's because I was learning Spanish and connecting the Spanish process learning with the English. And because of that, she believes her SAT improved when she took the SAT test. And you and I know the benefits for our kids to speak a second language is amazing because there
Right.
is so much happening in your brain
Right.
that the skills are beyond, and the effect in your brain. It is amazing what is happening
Right.
in somebody's brain when that person is becoming bilingual.
And I think too, and correct me if I'm wrong, we'll edit this out if I'm wrong, but, and two, from what I'm understanding, is that the Spanish language is a whole lot easier to learn. It's not as confusing as the English language. And so, did you find that learning English for the first time that was more complicated than Spanish? Because Spanish is a pure language, right?
Yes.
Their rules they don't change. Like EA, like here, what EAOUGH has 6 different sounds. Like, come on, like let's not make English any more harder. So
Yes.
Spanish is, if we're looking for a world language to learn, Spanish is supposed to be like the easiest one.
Yes, I do believe. My kids still correct my English. I can't pronounce some of the words, and one of them suggested maybe you need a speech therapy at this point, Mom. But I gotta tell you, because the Spanish, what you see is what you get. You have to pronounce it. So pronunciation, like my Spanish 1 course, I go through a lot of pronunciation exercises because one of the things I notice is that students are afraid to speak a language that is new, especially if you're a teenager. When kids are little, they don't care. They just say they're happy. They don't care about mistakes. But a teenager that is 14, 15, and you ask them, start talking, they feel like, I feel like a toddler, right? So there is so much happening emotionally when a teenager is learning a foreign language. So, but I would say it is easier, 100%. I still struggle in writing English. I remember when I went back to school, my professor asked, what are your concerns? I told him writing English, and he laughed because like, you're getting a master's. I know, but I know my writing is not really good because I think in Spanish. And plus, imagine how many people in the world speak Spanish. So many countries, so many people. When I went to Europe, I went to Spain and I went to France, and I had the opportunity to interact with students from Italy, from France, and they spoke beautiful Spanish. I'm telling you, I was like, we are behind here in the United States because the European cultures really take, learning a language very like it's a must. So I will say, if you want to try that language, start with Spanish. Now, my daughter is learning French now, and she's comparing what she's learning in Spanish with French, and she also starting to learn Italian. And when we hear what she's saying, it's like, oh, it sounds familiar than Spanish. And I also was in a call where they're speaking Portuguese, and I understood a lot of things because Portuguese is similar than Spanish. So yes, I agree, Michelle. Parents will not go wrong with speaking Spanish.
That's so true. I was like, so Kareem, before we get off this call, you mentioned about going to restaurants and our teens experiencing the language. That's what makes it fun. Give us some examples of when kids take your class. What would be fun exercises, be it, or homework that you would be asking or challenging those students to do in their own community?
Okay, I can think about one that is their favorite one, and that's the one we are learning about commands in Spanish too, and they have to basically choose a Hispanic recipe, and they have to then record themselves and talk about the recipe using commands. They love it because they get to go get the ingredients, then tell us about the ingredients in Spanish, tell us about the steps, how to cook it in Spanish, and guess what? Then they get to eat it. So,
yeah, that's so fun.
And I know one student did a recipe from Nicaragua, and he told me, it's one of the family's favorites right now. Now he gets to cook. So when everybody, how families you get to cook one day a week.
Uh-huh.
So everybody asking, please do your Nicaraguan dish. And I do still remember another student that he made a flan for me. And I'm going to tell you, he made the most amazing flan. So amazing. I wanted to cry. I was lucky because he lived close to my house. So he delivered two flans to me in a year. So it is just for me, that's fun.
Everybody's
It's fun.
Googling, what is a flan? Flan?
Flan is amazing.
And it's fun, like watching movies in Spanish, reading books in Spanish, or if you have a Latin festival in your area, like your kids going to those will take on whole new meaning if they've been exposed to the language. So
I remember one mom, she said that she has like a, container where they put, every time they speak Spanish, they put coins. And when when the container is full, they go to an authentic Hispanic restaurant, the favorite one.
Fun. See, we
Yeah.
want to make the learning the language fun. And we, at this high school level, we want to make it fun, but we want to put it on a transcript. So I love that you said your program, the reason why a program is better than doing it, winging it on your own with Duolingo or some of these online programs that are just self-paced, is that it's so difficult. If you are with me and I'm coaching you, you usually hear me say, we got to have a beginning and end when we're putting stuff on a transcript. There has to be, because in the homeschooling world, learning happens all the time. And that's why it gets difficult at the high school levels. Like, when do I put something on the transcript? So I love that your program will help the parents that, okay, we're going to take this class and at the end of it, it's going to go on the transcript like this. It's an important thing. It takes off one of those complicated things of homeschooling at the high school level. Is sometimes outsourcing and using a structure like yours. It just makes our lives, we're just becoming the facilitator at that point as a homeschool parent. So I love that about what you had said. That's really important.
Thank you so much, Michelle, for collaborating with me. We are joining forces, and thank you for the work that you do. Because, when you talk about transcripts, a transcript, you have to look at a transcript like the story of your child's learning. Mm-hmm. So, and thank you for helping parents put that document together. That I know it's challenging, but what an amazing opportunity and that they have to have you as a coach and as a guidance.
Well, as we sign off, I do appreciate all that. It's really sweet of you, but let's get people to your program. Can you just share with everybody your website so they know where to find you on the web, and maybe Instagram? Where can we find you on Instagram?
Yes, you can follow me on Instagram, Spanish Educational Solutions. And if you want to visit my website and learn a little bit about me, homeschoolspanishcurriculum.com.
Great. Well, thank you so much for offering this service to the homeschooling community. It is such a great value to the community. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. Hasta luego.